noticed the common man that New Hampshire.
That's beautiful.
They got them on the way up and the way back, and of course the big one's in Lincoln. But I like that place.
That was beautiful inside.
Yeah.
Like, what a nice rest stop. Have you been
Yeah.
there, Christine?
My daughter-in-law's bridal shower was at the one in New Hampshire, the Common Man.
The Lincoln, the original one.
Recording
That's
in
in Lincoln.
progress.
Oh, there we go. I must have went to the. You're talking rest stop, right?
Yeah. They branched them out.
Oh. Dan, what's your last two? Spangler.
You're all set.
We good, Ben?
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, call to order the March 5th, 2025 Housing Production Plan Update Working Group Meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
The
America,
flag of the United States of America,
Represents
to the republic
one nation
which
under
stands
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Threw me off a little bit.
Okay. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 order extending the temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law, this meeting of the Housing Production Plan Update Working Group is in hybrid format and is being recorded. The recording will be available on the town's website and YouTube channel. So we'll do a roll call. If any person, say in person, anybody here in person, say present and in person. And if you're online, say present and remote. Normand, Stephanie, Jim,
Present.
In person.
In person.
Michael,
Present in person.
Mario, Brian Jamers,
Present in person.
Andrea,
Present, remote.
okay, Don,
Present in person.
Pam,
Pam's present. In person.
Present in person.
Dan,
Present in person.
Wes, present in person, Brian Stevenson,
Present in person.
Jerry,
Present in person.
Christine,
Present in person.
Peter.
Present in person.
Okay, public forum. So the public forum, limited to 3 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees and agent or HC members shall be avoided, so as to not violate individuals' rights. Also, I'd like to remind the public that public forum is limited to this period at the beginning of each meeting and not during the working sessions. So is there anybody for discussion? I don't see anybody here in the room. And I don't see anybody online. Pam, can you confirm that?
Right now, it's only you and Andrew.
Okay.
Could you do me a favor though, Wes?
What's that?
Favor? Could you ask, I don't think Andrea right now she can hear us clearly. Can you ask what she sees visually? She can't hear me out.
Andrea, can you just confirm what you can see visually?
Yes, like,
The graphic?
I have my, full colleagues, sit around to the table.
Okay, so she can actually see the.
You can see the round table
Anything
here.
else I should be seeing?
Nope, that's just confirming, Pam, just
No,
confirming.
I cannot, it's on the screen,
Okay,
Cool.
yeah.
that's good, as long as she can see the room.
Sorry about that, folks, it's coming through the, screen is,
Okay. So we have to approve the minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes that we need to approve. The first one is from February 13th, 2025 with the updates that Jen had provided.
I'll motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
So we'll take go through this. Norman's not here, Steph's not here.
Aye. Jim.
Jim, Mike,
Mike Egan, aye.
Mario?
Brian Stevenson, aye.
Okay,
Don McKinnon, aye. Jerry Townsend, aye.
Dan Spangler, aye. Brian Jermis abstained. I was absent.
Peter Zoner, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye. Andrea,
Andrea, okay,
And Christine.
Christine Watkins, aye.
okay, thank you.
Peter? Did you do that?
She did,
Yep.
Peter, yep. So then we also have to approve the meeting minutes from February 19th, 2025. Was there an update set out to that one too?
Yep.
With Jen's comments?
And those are the, you can sign those.
A motion
Okay.
to approve?
Second?
Go through this again.
All right. Jim, aye.
Wesley, aye.
Mike Gagan, aye.
Brian Stevenson, aye.
Don McKinnon, aye. Jerry Townsend, aye.
Dan Spangler, aye. Brian Jermis, aye.
Peter Zona, aye.
Christine Wilkins, aye.
Andrea?
And say,
Okay. Great. I am going to,
You're gonna have to fix that if we're gonna have some discussion with her, that's all. That's not gonna
yeah,
work.
there's a little bit of a
She may wanna sign off. and sign
issue
off.
with the sound there, Andrea.
And if Wes, if you can just put your signature, I can put them in the book and be done with them. Sorry.
These both here.
Yeah, just. Then we're all copacetic.
Okay, so the first part here is just taking a review to try to finalize these MBTA parcels. And Jen has got some feedback from the Central Mass Regional Planning, which is going to help us narrow down these parcels we're looking at. Yeah, no problem. So just to recap, that we have been looking at 5 parcels of land. There's parcel 1, which is the 48 Worcester Providence Turnpike. Parcel 2 is 1 Unified Parkway on the south side. Parcel 3, 99 Boston Road. Parcel 4 is a 3034 Pleasant Valley Road, 151, 157 Boston Road. And parcel 5, 3 Lackey Dam Road. We have a slide for each one of these to make it easy to review.
All right, so I tortured both the chair and vice chair with a summary table and a brief look at the actual 5-page compliance model that goes into each of what these simple things you see here. So I worked with Central Mass Regional Planning to plug in the base parcel data, which excludes the land that you don't count per the state's formula. And basically these are the results of the compliance model for each of the initial parcels that were identified. So as you can see at parcel 1 or A, depending on which map you're looking at, 48 Worcester Providence Turnpike. That one, you can see the acreage, and then the amount after the slash mark on that screen is what the state uses in this compliance model. So you can see what's taken away per the compliance model. So we have nothing to do with that. The state plugs in their category of land that's excluded, and it's automatically calculated up at that level.
So can I just ask you a favor? For those of us sitting far away, can you just read the numbers? I'm assuming that's the second block, and it's like 26/21?
Roughly, 26.5 acres, and that is brought down to 23.9 acres.
Thank you, Wes, because
Yep.
you can probably see that
Yeah.
better than me. Per your request, I limited stories to 3 stories. I only plugged in a 4 if I was trying to meet a unit model or unit compliance standard. So you'll see all of these are pretty much 3 stories. And then and I put no unit cap in this particular model, and use the minimum units per acre. So we can't go lower than 15, so we certainly didn't plug in something higher than 15. We wanted the least in there. And when you plug it in their compliance model, it results in, and Wes, I can't read it, so you can.
398 units would be produced out of this parcel.
Right, and again,
390.
as we'll talk about,
398.
as we'll talk about probably on a different parcel, that's certainly not any kind of guarantee when you actually consider the specifics of the parcel. But again, this is the number that is results from the state's compliance model. So it does not matter in reality if you could actually get that many. That's just the number that pops out of their compliance formula. And as long as that number is higher than the one that came out of legislation for Sutton, which is 181, is the most units we have to accommodate, then you're in compliance if the number is 181 or higher. You can see what it results to in units per acre, and it's 16.6. To be in compliance, that has to be at least 15 per the statute. So this parcel technically results in a pass for compliance. But again, when you look at it real quick, that's more units than you need. It's more units than you have to produce. So the initial thing is, that's more. Now, could I play with the compliance model? These guys saw how many different input areas you can input into things. I guess spending the rest of my life playing with the compliance models. But again, just trying to go at each of these parcels with basic parameters before we even start playing with them. We're treating each one initially the same way. So
If I could just chime in for a second, just to give a little bit of context up front, just in case anybody's watching this or just for people in the room, on the whole MBTA piece, which is Section 48, Part 3A, of course, that's the MBTA communities, as Jen mentioned, the regulation in there, the way the math all works out, we have to have 180. There's been some questions at 2 meetings ago whether or not, as a town, we should comply. There's a question at the select board last night. From our perspective at the HPP, I would recommend that we plan as though we're going to comply. So this whole discussion right now is to talk about these different units, get a sense for what the math says, talk about them, discuss the ideas around them, and then be able to say some of them maybe come off the table, some of them we would recommend to be slotted for that should the town decide we want to comply. We want to be able to offer up a package to say, here's the draft bylaw and here's the recommended parcels, so that should we decide to comply, that we're ready to do so.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
If I could add in, I just think it, and tell me if I'm lying, Jen, on this. Looking at this with this type of one place, it comes in compliance with what the MBTA is saying we need to do.
Right.
So it just shows to come in compliance is not that difficult. I mean, as far as this piece, it doesn't mean that's what we want to do, but
Yeah.
this place, if it fit within the guidelines by itself, would put us in compliance and move on and next,
So-
not saying that's what we
Yeah.
want, but just
Yes.
to get an idea
would.
how simple it is to come.
Let's
The
go through
minimal-
these, because what this shows is, yes, we're in compliance, but if we zone it the way it is right here, we're gonna have nearly 400 units built on it.
Right.
So
Which
if
is,
we
right.
move on to the next one here,
Okay.
going by the same data, or the same review.
Yeah. So, so what we did was, this is a little more difficult exercise. There, and Wes captured it really well. So the parcel that is actually an official assessor's parcel is the giant parcel, the 181. There is a process, not a simple one, and it's more hoops to jump through, where you can pull a part of a parcel out. So per our discussion at past meetings, we did just that. We worked with CMRPC and we pulled out just the 21, 22 acres on the south side of the parcel directly across against Boston Road, where we talked about the pad that's already cleared and more area could be cleared. So, so the first thing on this is to actually get this, if you only designated this parcel, to actually get this kind of a check mark with the state, there would be an extra hurdle or two because it's not its own assessor parcel. I'm fairly confident because I didn't do the stuff. Central Mass Regional Planning did the parcel adjustments that I'm relatively sure it will be good, but again, one more hurdle if you were to go with this parcel. All right, so this one, you can see it starts at about 24 and change, and per the state's constraint formula, there are none on this parcel, so it's the same. 3 stories max, no overall unit cap, units per acre, we plug in at the 15. this one, per their formula, could result in about 322 units, and dead on meets the 15 units per acre. So again, technically a pass, but same thing, you're overproducing. Why would you overproduce if you don't have to?
Correct.
Okay, so here's the next one.
So then we're on to 99 Boston Road.
This one's a little more complicated, but let's go through it. So you'll see I did just one manipulation based on our last conversation. So 99 Boston Road is the parcel that's been proposed for two different 40Bs. A 60 unit by John LeClaire and a 100 unit by Venacasa just last year. And the Venacasa one, we have detailed engineering on that. So we did the same thing. It's about a 14-acre parcel. You can see even the state's pretty lax constraint model pulls this down to much less, almost 7 and change, almost 8 acres. So you lose a chunk of land in the compliance model. Cap it at 3 stories, as you asked me to. First line does no unit caps, okay? So, and would result in their formula with 215 units, and you got your, because of the restrictions on the land, you easily meet the 15 units per acre in the formula. So, because 215 is not much more than 181, so just for the fun of it, because that's facetious, because the units per acre was so high, I said, well, let's play with this and just drop it down to barely what we need, the 181, okay? And when you do that, you're still in compliance and you're 22.8. So this is a parcel where you could check the box and be done as well. The interesting thing about this is because we have the Venacasa detailed engineering, we know, as we've said in past meetings, that there's probably little way you get more than 100 units. So we could check the box, because it says 181, but we know we probably wouldn't get more than 100 off this. All right, so that's an interesting one.
So then we look at the fourth parcel, which
Yep.
is 3034 Pleasant Valley Road,
So we
151, 157 Boston.
We combined all of this to maintain 2 points of access, Boston Road and Route 146, always safer, always better. So, and that totals about 20 and change. With the constraints, I think it stayed pretty much the same. And stories at 3, no unit cap. Again, their formula puts you over 300 units and just barely meets the unit thing. So, again, overproducing. Why do we want to overproduce? So, on to the next one.
So 3 Lackey Dam Road.
All right, so this one at first blush looked really good. And you had a comment in your last meeting from a resident that was allowed to speak during your meeting that said, oh, just give off 7 acres. Again, that is not a simple process. And when you start to get anything below 10, 15 acres, the state's like, all right, it does raise an eyebrow and you have more compliance issues. So again, so you automatically, it's just easier to look towards already established parcels and see if you can get what you want with stuff that's already out there. So, great location, great access, but this one has 39 acres. With the constraints, it comes down, what does that say, Wes?
38.64
Yeah,
acres.
you don't lose a lot, even though there's wetlands. 3 stories, no unit caps. 500, excuse me?
I'm talking to Wes.
What's that?
594 units. Now, keep in mind, on any of these, I can play with the compliance models in putting caps, but when you put in artificial caps, it blows that other number. See, this is still only 15.4, it's barely compliant. So I could say, oh, we don't want 594, and I can artificially put, we want 181, and you lose the 15.4 compliance. So, and when you're in the very complicated compliance model, you start to see how shifting this loses this, or pulling this up loses that. So again, way overproducing, way overproducing. So why would we do that? So.
And then we have a combination of parcels.
So you asked me to do combinations, so I did at least these combinations. And, all right, so, so the first one you asked me to do was 99 Boston plus 1 Unified Parkway, total of 35, comes down to 29, 3 stories. And this is where I did a little playing based on trying to get part of the parcels on one lot, units on one lot, and part of the units on another lot, okay? So on this first one, I put no restriction on 99 Boston, because again, we know in the back of our minds, we're realistically capped around 100. And then you'll see, oh, but she put 200 and something on that other one. That's the number I had to go with to get compliance on the units per acre, up to 15. You can see just barely up to that. So it says technically, even though we know a little bit better on 99 Boston Road, that you have 445 unit potential. So we're like, ugh. So then we went to the next one, 99 Boston and 30 PV Road, that 4 parcel combination. 34 acres comes down to about 28, 3-story restriction. I restricted, this time, you gotta play the game. I restricted 99 Boston Road to 125, put no restraint on 30, generates 435 and just barely qualifies, so too many. I didn't do no on 99 this time, because if you did the restriction on the other one, it didn't work, it blew the model. It doesn't always make sense unless you've played inside the model endlessly. But again, I'm trying to get you as little units as possible in production, but I still gotta meet at least 15 units per acre in that compliance column. So, then we did 99, and 30 PV again, and you'll see I tried to do 100 on each to evenly split our needs on each, and you can see the big fat fail. Big fat fail. So, and then we did 30 PV Road and 3 Lackey per the suggestion of the person that talked last week, and you pass with 930 units. So again, why would we do that?
Right.
Why? So,
Overproduction.
yeah. So here you go. So, you have a pretty smart vice chair who does his homework. So he called me and he said, Jen, I've been poking around, I've been looking at maps and bylaws that other towns are filing, and I found this one where I forget what you said. If you said it had housing, but you said if it had housing, it didn't have a lot, and you didn't know if it was all compliant, but it had commercial uses too.
Yep. Wayland, the town of Wayland.
Town of Wheeling. So I said, really? Well, needless to say, I went to all the trainings on this. And so I said, did I miss that in the training? So I went back to the primary training and went back through the video. Yeah, shockingly, the state didn't mention that you could maybe put your district over something that's already fully developed. I know we're all shocked. But, so I called Central Mass Regional Planning and I asked my mapping guy, I said, I know you're not running models for everybody in Central Mass, but have you seen models where communities are doing this? He said, look, I've definitely run models over developed land. Almost all of them are over housing that might qualify, housing that's at least 15 units per acre, but they're not pure housing. There's gas stations in there, there's, and those aren't getting excluded in the model. And I said, really? So, per Jim's suggestion, he said, well, what's the chance that a brand new market, a brand new bank, and Starbucks and Five Guys, that a developer would knock all that down just to build multifamily housing? So we said, you know what, we can play that game. So we plugged it into the compliance model. So as you can see, you've got some, you didn't trip any compliance issues, or very few. Capped at 3 stories, no unit cap, minimum units per acre, 153, boo, just barely met the 15 units, 15.2.
Yeah.
Lovely, doesn't comply.
Right, because
By itself.
because we don't have enough space here, but if people can see the map, that is Market 32, that is Five Guys, and that's Starbucks. If you look slightly to the north, or the north of this picture, and you look over the car wash and over the dialysis center, that would add generally speaking, enough space to bump this up.
Right, so I had ran just kind of I need the parcel information from CMRPC. So we had already tortured them by asking them to send us the information for the post office parcel across the street, because it's the perfect size to get us up where we need to be. So we ran that, I had them run that, and it met, right?
Yep.
It met the model. So you could do this and the post office parcel and comply, and in effect, have something that's, at least on this parcel, not likely to ever happen.
Yeah.
But the fear on the other parcel is, Sutton Plaza is an old plaza, and it's owned by RK Associates. They're well-known, very aggressive retail and some residential development. And especially with the potential for the flyover and changing things around, I can't say with any kind of confidence that they wouldn't consider knocking down that dated plaza and putting up housing on that parcel directly against 146.
Can you just repeat? You're not talking about the parcel 30 to 34
No.
Pleasant Valley. You're just talking about the post office
parcel
par-
across the street.
Which is
Plaza.
parcel 74 on,
Yeah, it's
If you
right
can see the
across the
small
street.
print.
It's the little corner over there.
So you need that in order to get this to pass.
Well, that was one of the things
one
Jim
option.
said, hey, let's find just a big enough parcel, because we know the number is 12, 13, 14 acres right in there to get us where we need to be. So he looked around and he's like, oh, let's try the post office parcel. That front piece is fully built out. So we had CMRPC run that, and as we were talking this afternoon, the model came back and it met it. But the worry was, where we're not worried about Market 32 being bulldozed or any of that being bulldozed for housing, there is a possibility that we have to acknowledge that it might make fiscal sense to bulldoze that and do multifamily.
But how many
Yes.
units could somebody realistically put on just that parcel?
Right, and,
but it's not, because it's the same owners own.
Right.
But if you go back to the other map, the same owners own 74, 73, 72.
Yeah.
And-
66 and 140
And I was at the
two on the numbers of those lots.
Wilkes Water District meeting last week, and RK was there with Bowler Engineering.
Yeah.
And so they're looking to get out of the lease with Stop and Shop, and they were there for Wilkes because they already have a request in. They had been looking for 17,000 gallons, but they don't have actually a permit on file. So they're not really in the queue to get water right away until they actually have an actual project with a permit in place. But they have several ideas, and one is 250 apartments.
Yeah, so just to assuage any fears, we're not suggesting doing it at Sutton Square, right? We were just
No.
looking at that because
So we looked at it,
we looked at it.
and then I met with Jim again today, and we said, and we had this conversation. Told him what I know about RK, what you found out as you're talking about it, and said, I'm leery of that. Even though it works, I'm leery of that. So, and I have had a conversation with the owner of Market 32, who, because again, I am not going to recommend you designate anything unless we've talked to the owner.
Yeah.
Because you don't need that kind of mess. So I talked to him about this, and he said, fine. We're not gonna knock it down, I can tell you that. That's not in anybody's crazy plan. But yeah, if it works for you, if we can help the town out, fine.
So anyone in town who's concerned about MBTA, this is a good option to do it
Right.
there. I think the other important thing, not to jump topics, but that vacant lot up above, possibly where Lowe's could go, or different options. That's a good zone for 40R development. I'm sure we'll talk about that in due time, but
Yeah.
that would be a nice adjacent thing. So
Yeah,
keep
we
the
didn't wanna designate or waste that parcel on anything but 40B or 40R if it was used for housing at all.
correct.
So again, you can see how few units you're missing. You're only missing 28 units.
Which could be fit in above the car wash.
We can't do it. I ran the number with just the convenient MD. It's only 1.2 acres. It doesn't meet it.
Yeah.
So just plugging in the acreage, adjusting the acreage, and just running it, it didn't work. It looks like if you do this with the Love to Play car wash parcel, or all three just for total continuity, it works.
But
So
without
again,
without the one on the post office
without
part.
the bottom,
So
just what you're seeing on this map.
So if I'm
Those-
looking at the small numbers, it's 151, 93, 9, and 30, and
Yeah.
36,
And
including
again,
that big parcel in the back.
If you wanna dump out the convenient MD, you can, and I think you're still gonna comply, but
Yeah.
I was just thinking contiguousness, it
Yeah.
just. But yeah, so in effect, you can play by the rules you've been given and designate an area, check a box that has extremely little or no possibility of ever being used.
When I was
But the
20
town of
something,
Weston did.
But is
Yeah.
that the middle?
Yeah.
Town of Weston, Massachusetts did the same thing.
Yes.
Right, in a lot of towns, you
Yes.
saw it in Millbury, it was recommended, their bylaw was recommended, and they've changed their course. The Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board recommended the original thing because what they were doing was putting a line around housing that's already there, that already qualified. That's what you see in a lot of towns, but when Jim said, it wasn't all housing, and then I asked MBTA, went back to the training and said, that's not on there, but started poking around, you saw more and more of that. So again,
Yep.
just playing by the rules. Just playing by the rules.
So we can be in compliance with minimum impact on the quality of life,
Right.
character of Sutton, etc.
Or none. Right. So,
Jim, this is Andrea Matei. The interesting, attractive feature about this parcel is that it proves that the commercial use of it is profitable because they don't want to take it down. So that opens up the discussion, well, isn't that really what we want for housing that works for walkability, proximity to grocery stores, proximity to essential services like phone, urgent care, and so forth. So if we step back, if we find this location attractive and it's within the rules, there is a logical progression of discussion that we can make which supports it. The commercial does not have to be freestanding individual slot units. The commercial can be consolidated into a ground floor.
I think we might be talking about two different things, Andrea, but
Oh, she's taking the next step.
the 40R.
Right.
You know, I'm down the line on this
Oh,
because
okay.
I can understand why it was attractive and I can see it working, and I think that Jen's creative and accurate view of staying within the lines, the box, but looking at this and Jim's observation that we can preserve what we want to preserve without doing damage. Then we move to the next step, which is, and here's the logical extension of why this is a good idea.
Absolutely. So I want to give you a caveat. So nobody's knocking down any of these buildings according to the developer. Be very clear. Not that I think this would happen, not that he even whispered, suggested, said anything that would make me believe this would happen, but you could put housing on top of Five Guys. You could put,
Sure.
you know,
They do
so,
it out west a lot.
Again,
I mean,
what if
Jen,
you
I'm
cap
sorry
it
to
at
interrupt you.
3? It's capped at 3.
The configuration of the location of the commercial units is not the controlling factor. What is controlling is that the commercial units, if they have a lease, will find another place in whatever is the new rendering of how the structure will work.
So,
That's the next step, right? You're gonna relocate them to something else that's
Yeah,
gonna be a lot better and look a lot nicer and have
No.
people,
I
I love you.
No.
So all
Andrea,
we
I
have
think-
to do
I-
is go-
No.
I think practically, my own guess is you wouldn't see the tenants of those locations relocating. I think what the next logical step would be to say to that open lot north of it for 40R, hey, would there be a partner who would want to do some ground floor retail, farm to table, take your pick of
Now,
nice development?
Completely on board.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, all I'm trying to say is, we wonder sometimes how on earth you could take something down that was, put up within the last 10 years. Except you need to do what people do when they build a resort. Take it down and build it up. So it's not outside of the realm of logic.
Excuse me, Andrea? So the benefit of this parcel is that you don't have to build housing. The parcel's already developed. But it meets the compliance model that in 50 years, if they demolished it, it's multi-housing by right.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be configuring this space at this point, that's what the,
I would recommend we don't
Yeah.
try to theorize what
Yeah.
is
Thank
going
you.
to happen and what
Yeah,
could
no, I
happen.
hear you, Wes. I'm
It's
done.
up-
What
yeah.
I'm trying to say is,
Yep.
we, in the spirit of good faith and
Yep.
fair dealing,
Yep,
have
So-
posited, with Christine's point, with
Yep.
Jim's points, with your
Yep.
points, we have posited logical outcomes for this parcel in its
Exactly.
existing status.
so in this here, what could be a recommendation is that out of the original, so let's look at what Jim has brought forward and looked at what Jen has looked at Central Mass Regional Planning. It only fails because it needs a little bit more land out of that parcel. So let's get a little bit more land out of that parcel, and we can overlay it over the existing land. And then if we have to, because of the law gets passed and is fully, enforced, and we need to go in front of the town and get the bylaw put in place, then we have a parcel that can be approved and it's logical. And it doesn't bring in so much housing that doesn't have the affordable housing that we need for 40B and for safe harbor. If for some reason the state says that is not gonna work, we can't overlay it, they change their rules and stuff like that, we have a backstop. We have that 99 Boston Road, which we know is the most other logical place to go. And that could be our recommendation going forward for this housing production plan, because it seems like the logical way to safeguard Sutton from overproduction.
So you're basically doing the minimum required, and frankly, in the first proposal, you're doing less than the minimum required, but you're following the rules.
Mhm.
You're playing within the box.
And importantly, from our time frame, this is gonna give us a chance to explain something that's pretty easy to comprehend to the
I think it is.
people in town.
Mhm.
This is the first thing that actually can get a yes vote in 2 months.
Can be done.
It's risk mitigation.
Yes.
Huh?
This is easy to explain.
Yeah, cool.
All right,
All
so,
right. So now,
Can I back up before we do that?
let's do that, yeah, let's finalize it.
All right.
Dan,
that?
I think you had a question.
Jerry,
Dan.
Dan?
This is including the lot that has the new Ready Health Clinic on top of it, correct?
it
So it
can't be
encompasses
just the ready med, it
Okay.
can't be just, so
But
it's,
no, but it encompasses that lot.
if
too,
you,
okay.
if you want it to be continuous, we should
Yeah,
just
it was
shove
on
that
that
in
last
there.
map, I just didn't get all my notes down before
Yeah.
it changed.
How would that be impacted if the DOT took Ready Med by eminent domain for any type of highway project? We would still be covered if they had already approved
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our district's approved, the state changed the rules in the middle of the game, that's not our fault.
Is the DOT likely to touch the ready med anyway?
They're gonna try like hell not to, because that's
One
just
point
gonna
20
drive,
years ago, right?
yeah, you never know, it's a
No, no,
guessing
like you
game
touch
as well.
this.
Oh, microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Uh,
I'm so sorry.
Hold the base.
I was promising to be good at that. Sorry. So yeah, my question is the DOT likely to take ReadyMed, because 20 years ago they were planning on taking the Bank of America, which is specifically why Bank of America put the building there, by the way. So
You're not done.
so they're probably not going to take that at this point.
I don't like speculation, but I don't see that. But you never know, because again, the driveway to Ready Med goes to what would become the ramp system. So unless the state can negotiate with Market 32, Galaxy, to get an interior entrance, they might have no choice. But again, it would basically not then be usable for housing unless it went to the interior roadway.
That's what.
And it's still only an acre of land.
That's what I was about to say. If we pass this first, and then the state comes in and takes the DOT, it's after the fact. We've already done our job.
Correct. Correct. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna make two motions. Let me just give a little bit of context to it first. So I think what we want to do is agree to put together the bylaw, and pick a spot, and then basically go pencils down the MBTA piece. There were questions around, hey, why is the HPP team looking at the MBTA? We were all doing it to be holistic, right? We are doing a holistic housing production plan. We're looking at that. We're looking at affordability. We're looking at 40R. We're looking at ADUs, et cetera. We're trying to be a holistic HPP. So that's why we're looking at this. But motion one I would make is that we agree to do the bylaw and to pick a parcel primary and a backup parcel, and then we basically stop work on this as an HPP.
And just say
Yeah,
that.
Jim, I'm gonna, before you make the motion,
Yeah.
before you're done, I'm gonna object to it. because there's nothing on the agenda that speaks to what you just said. What the agenda says is that we will make a recommendation for the MBTA parcel. So maybe what you do is limit your motion to a proposed MBTA recommendation, which is the exact words from the agenda.
Yeah, because I was just gonna say that, Jen, you're gonna do the actual bylaw?
Well, I'll do the first pass.
Yep.
I think you need to take a look at it.
Yep.
But the bylaw.
Jen, actually, there's a bylaw that I did that's in circulation, and I will provide that to you, and then you and I can sit down and go over and try to create a draft.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And Andrew, just for context, I was
I know that, yeah.
I was just
Jen,
sugge-
everybody's gonna see it. This is not, if you'd like me to email my draft that I sent to Jen, I'll be happy to do that.
No, just,
None of it's gonna surprise you, anyone, but to go back to the parliamentary requirement, Jim and I, with all deference to you as our vice chair and to Wes, the language of the agenda says, continuation of review of parcels of proposed, as needed, of proposed for MBTA recommendation. So if I may suggest, please, that you say, I make a motion that we recommend, and then whatever you're recommending, and then ask for a second without a vote, because there's nothing that says we're gonna vote on it.
No, you're well within, Andrea, I'm sorry to disagree, but obviously I've been doing this for a little while inside.
No,
Yes,
go ahead,
Bob.
Jen. Here's why I'm raising the question now. I don't want any objections to what we're doing at any point in the future. So tell me I'm wrong, and I admit I'm wrong, and I'm happy to accept your leadership.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't have to state on the agenda that you're going to vote on something. You're putting forth a recommendation per the agenda, so any motion you make relative to the subject matter that's listed on the agenda, which is a recommendation, is in bounds, basically. So.
Okay, that's
yeah.
fine, good. So Jim?
Yeah.
It's not a selection, it's a recommendation, and step out.
Yeah. First, and again, just so people understand why I'm suggesting this, it's because we've been putting a lot of work into this, and we got to move on with other pieces. So just, I've been getting questions from people in town. Hey, why are you putting a bunch of work into this? Again, it was to be holistic. It was because it's a relevant, germane topic. But I think we want to be able to say, we're going to do the, we've done a bunch of work. We're going to do a little bit more work, and then we're going to basically pencils down on the MBTA topic. So that's the rationale, and I can.
to reduce the risk of it and mitigate how many units.
And if I may, through the chair, we're just making recommendations. There's no,
Right. Correct.
there's no
Yeah,
authority
exactly.
here whatsoever. So we can make all the recommendations we want. There's no governing authority here.
Yeah.
No authority.
Re-say it?
So I will, again, apologies, I'm an MBA, not a JD, so I'll take a crack at this. But I will make a motion that we agree to write a draft bylaw, and we agree to pick a recommended parcel and a recommended backup parcel.
Second.
As discussed this evening, so these parcels, I just want to make clear.
These
These
parcels,
parcels.
yes.
Okay.
As discussed this evening. Okay, second by Mario.
Christine, maybe just, that's going to be attached to the minutes, or you could just write in the addresses of the parcels we talked about.
These parcels on the screen for clarity, correct?
Yeah, but you don't see the two we didn't talk about on the
Just note
screen,
that Jen is
so
gonna
the convenient
draft
MD
the
parcel and
bylaw.
Yeah, and just for notation, Jen will draft the bylaw. I'm sure others,
along with Andrea.
Andrea will contribute greatly.
Yes,
Do you want that in the motion?
it's up to you.
All right, so I have
It doesn't need to
that
be.
we agreed
Just wanna make sure.
to write, we agree to write a draft bylaw and agree to pick a recommended parcel and backup parcel.
And then essentially stop work.
Well,
Yeah.
you're gonna recommend the primary parcel and the backup parcel as discussed this evening.
As discussed this
This evening.
evening.
Page
So
11.
17 Galaxy
And then
Pass
write in
plus those other
addresses,
two.
and then Jen will draft the bylaw with Andrea. Do I have
Or
to
what-
put that?
I mean, you don't even need, that's operational, you don't even
Okay.
need to put that in there. You're drafting a bylaw,
But write the parcels into
If
the
she's
motion.
drafting a bylaw, it's gonna be everybody's, review that's gonna right, Jen, that's gonna create the
But
final
yeah,
bylaw
Andrea,
that we
do
recommend.
not send
Yeah.
out draft documents to the entire committee. Do not, open meeting violation.
Okay,
So,
just send it to Jen and myself and Jim.
yep. And then when we get it down to kind of our final version, that's when we'll all come back together in open meeting and have that discussion.
So just for fun, it's going to be, the backup is 99 Boston Road, and the first one, what are we gonna call that one? So just so we're in here, it's in the
Galaxy
motion.
Parcels, I
So-
just call
Yeah,
them the
Galaxy.
Galaxy
parcels.
parcels
You got one that's not technically Galaxy, but it's,
and 99 Boston backup, okay. Just so I have, make sure that I'm, okay, and seconded, and then go ahead.
thank you.
All right.
All right,
Yes. Aye.
you done?
Do we vote on this, Jen? We do
Yeah,
a
you gotta vote,
We
yeah.
gotta vote.
Yep.
Well, was there a second?
Mario.
Yeah.
Mario second.
We open up discussion, or we don't need discussion at this point?
Any discussion?
Too much discussion.
Okay. Jim, aye.
Wesley, aye.
Mike Gage and I.
Brian Stevenson, aye.
Mario Jamea, aye.
Pam, don't forget Pam.
Oh, Pam, there you go.
Pam Nichols, aye.
Don McKinnon, I.
Jerry Townsend, aye.
Dan Spangler, aye.
Brian Generous, aye.
Peter Zona, aye.
Christine Watkins, aye.
Andrea Matei, aye.
Good. So now, let's get down to breaking up the actual reports or doing the updates. There's gonna, on this, we're breaking up the actual reports.
The actual HPP.
Yes. So that MBTA is a portion, like a chapter. Yes, Mario? Is that a question?
I think do we have to declare that the motion is passed?
Always good.
Motion's passed. We are on to the next stuff. So, the actual, we'll be doing this update with the subgroups. Each subgroup could be working on a section or sections in your group. Could work with a common drive, so like a Dropbox. That way you can work on the actual draft reports, any files that you need, like whether it's Excel, photos or documents that need to go for the actual updates, keeping backups on any superseded versions as well. But only members of the subgroup, chair and vice chair, will have access to that common drive for that particular subgroup, and there'll be multiple Dropboxes, we'll say, for each individual subgroups themselves. Then myself and Jim, chair, vice chair, will work on combining into an actual master draft that we could then, review here as the entire team, entire group. And then all reference materials, just keep note, any reference materials that you use for doing your research, for putting together your actual draft reports, keep that, because we'll have to put that up online onto the actual website. Please try to keep it similar to the same format as the 2019. Don't necessarily blow everything up and re-change everything. It's gonna make it a lot of work for redoing the actual report. It's gonna be more work for myself and Jim. So we'd appreciate it if you kept to a similar format. Has everybody reviewed the housing production plan from 2019? Okay.
Oh, does everybody have the right one?
Does everybody have the 2019 right version?
So the formatting is exactly the same, but Christine noticed that the version she printed at some former date had some data that was 2017 to 2019 data, and the one I printed for you and the one that was on some point on the website was 2016 to 2018 data. So there is the version that was approved is 2017 to 2019 data. So again, it's exactly the same plan, exactly the same wording. There's just the one that's on the website now and that I sent back out to you guys like a week or two ago is the one with the 2017 to 2019 data. Unless you're like totally focusing on the 2017 to 2019 data, which I don't know why you would, other than looking at general trends, then you don't need to worry about it. So if you can't find the email with the 2017 to 2019 and you want to be referencing or looking at that data, let me know. I'll re-email it to you. But we should have an update update of that whole section. It's like 20-something pages, no later than the 24th of March, earlier if they can finish it at CMRPC. So you will have that whole updated section by then. So
That was the updated data section,
the
20
updated,
pages?
I think it goes from like page 8 or 10 all the way to page 31. So it's that whole upfront section that contains all the demographics, all the housing stats, all of that, and the text around it. So they'll be doing that whole, updating that all. A lot of it doesn't update because it's really just base situations. You know, the Sutton community is still the Sutton community, you know, and those kind of things.
So that's like the
So-
introduction to housing needs assessments, which is all demographics.
Yeah.
Housing market, which is the demographics as well, information.
Mm-hmm.
And the housing challenges, which is all that data as well. It's all data driven.
Yeah, it's just base information really. That doesn't change much, and where it does change, we'll make those tweaks.
So that's like a third of the report, half
It's
the
a
report.
chunk. It's a
is-
big chunk.
Is being
so.
updated, and you're reviewing that with them, so I have that, yourself and themselves are in progress of updating it.
Yep, underway.
So then we get into the recommendation section. And what I have here is just make it, keep a table that we can start divvying this up. There's three main sections that were in the previous report. And there's a capacity building strategies, zoning strategies, and should be a three. Housing development strategies. And the recommendations for each, 3.1, 3.2, 2.1, they're all labeled like that in the actual report structure. So we could keep these and update them as needed, and then add anything that's new that's needed for recommendations. So how would we, is there people like, we did a straw poll for updating or taking different groups beginning. Some of these are gonna, be adjacent to what you did for reviewing like economics, reviewing the actual outreach to the town, things like that. So are there, the sections here, like say the Community Preservation Act, that kind of is similar to some of the economic review. Some have gone through the 40R, 40S review. That's actually a chapter and recommendation of this actual report. So it kind of makes sense that for some of the folk who in this team that have done some of that review to probably take on those updates of this actual report. So I recommend taking a look here and seeing what actual aspects of this report make sense for yourselves to actually do the updates. Did you have something to say? I see you lean towards the mic. I just saw you lean towards the mic. No?
Yeah, so, just to underscore, as you go through this, it's really, do you think all of these sections remain or still need to be there? And what new sections do you think need to be plugged in and kind of where? So you keep the continuity that's already in the plan. And then just like Wes said, some of you are already delving in on some of these subjects. So raise a hands if you're feeling like writing and you've already done some of the work, or you're just really excited about a subject. Obviously, this isn't a thesis, but if you're confident you're writing, you can kind of pull out the major facets and pros and cons of each kind of thing and kind of get to a conclusion. And it doesn't, obviously, it's subgroups. So one person, two people, three people, you're just staying under quorum.
Through the chair, this is Andrea. I volunteer to work on and write, because I've already started, pretty much any of the sections. But in fairness to all of you, one of the things that I'm focusing on is a balance between development and preservation. And the preservation that I'm thinking about is restriction and basically conservation land. So that what we would have in this new HPP is a balance between maintaining what we are trying to maintain in Sutton, which is our rural history, our R1 zoning districts, our limitation on density development, and preservation of conservation land. But I in that mode, giving away what my bias is, because when I read the housing production report, it really felt to me almost like a broadside to bring development to Sutton. But what we know from the town meeting is that may not resonate in all corners. And I am happy to sign on for drafting and revision and discussion and everything that's needed.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing wrong with expressing the majority of opinion of the HPP group if it is, and I don't think anybody's contrary to wanting to preserve Sutton, wanting to preserve the feel of the community. That's why we're looking at things as simple as limiting multifamily housing to 3 stories and talking about other forms of housing that might fit in. But the goal of the HPP is to produce a plan that shows how and when you're going to meet your 40B responsibilities. Yep. So it's not really a place to spend a whole chapter or a soliloquy on wow, you know, this is our 40B production plan. Oh, and I think we should do conservation zoning and this and that and the other thing. That's just kind of outside the scope of this. I definitely think as we have a little of up front in this plan and throughout the plan, it's healthy to have those references to kind of what your base goals are, which is to be working into each of these 40B goals you have, the Sutton version of 40R, the Sutton version of cottages, if you go with that, the Sutton version of each of those things, and then that all comes back to kind of something in your front end and kind of your purpose and your goals thing, that it is the intent of the HPP committee to nod to the open space plan, the master plan, and the work that's been done over the years to try to preserve the community. The HPP is meant to show how you will produce housing. So yes, it is a development document, but there's nothing wrong with saying we will meet these development goals, but in the Sutton manner.
Yeah, and Jen, the word that I want to use is balance, because my model for this is Princeton and other small towns in Massachusetts, which are willing to do development, willing to do housing construction, provided that it is balanced with preservation, conservation, and most significantly, the aesthetic, which the regulations clearly permit of the town. We are not creating a document to be given to developers that is a broadside on why you should come to Sutton. Yeah. It is a statement of the town on which we as the residents desire to achieve.
This is looking at trying to put together a housing production plan that could work with the right type of developers that will embed themselves in the community and actually work to get our legal like 40B requirements without overdeveloping the town. Because like I've done the math before, and if we just allow this to, you know, for-profit developers to come here and use the 40B law, it's going to be, you know, in the thousands.
2,000.
2,000 units. And if we need to, you know, look at water.
And there's not even enough room to.
Well, this is what I'm getting to. Sewerage and like if they use wells and septic tanks like Burbank Woods, we're not counting this in square acres. We're counting the development in square miles. So to get like what Andrea is saying, to stitch this back together to why we're looking at the right type of developments, we want the square miles to be preserved as farms and forests with the right type of developments and right type of developers to work with us to get our requirements within the acres. We don't want all of our square miles to be developed with thousands of units. We want over time, like 300 units or so to be built over time to keep us in safe harbor, so they're not overdeveloped, you know, destroying the fabric of our town for profit. And that's what this is all about. That's the production that we're looking at, how to do this in our community the right way.
And you need to be thinking about.
Thank you, Wes. That's much more eloquent than I could ever say it, because it incorporates this essential concept of continuing balance in our objectives for the town.
Yeah, and having a statement like that or that right up front in your plan is completely appropriate. It lays the groundwork. I'm very sad that you don't think that's what the current plan was expressing, but that's why you guys can perfect this one so you think that's clearer. I do want to caution.
Jen, I don't
it's-
think it, let me comment on that. Times have changed since 2012, and I am not convinced that anyone who drafted that report was under the pressures legislatively that we are.
Thank you. So the one thing to keep in mind is while you're drafting the sections, that you understand it would be nice if it was $2.99 and done, but it's not. Today, it's $2.99 and done. You need to be thinking about as you draft your sections when you're looking at 40R, when you're looking at alternate forms of housing, if you decide to do that, that the
Base goes up.
the inclusionary zoning piece is, and making sure that you're keeping up with any other units that might be built. Roadside development, subdivisions, other subdivisions that are built, and, our worst case is a big number. The reality is when you look at the acreage in town and what's restricted and what's not, you couldn't get to that worst case, but we want to protect against that worst case in some weird place if it could happen, and take a multi-pronged approach to meeting your goals and making sure you continue to meet them going forward. So you don't have to do this crazy unit rush 20 years from now.
Yeah. Just a comment just to respond to what Andrea said, and Jen, you touched on this for a second, but if you think about the preservation of open space, of forests, et cetera, I think two spots jump out to me under where that it becomes very relevant. One is on the cottage zoning. So if you remember at town meeting the last time, I don't think many people understood cottages. I certainly didn't understand it there, but Jen, you and I in your office today talked about, I would feel much better if it was a mechanism like, hey, you're gonna have 15 cottages, but the lot has to be 30 acres, 45 acres, whatever the right kind of piece is. But I think having spent some time living in Europe, it kind of blew my mind. You'd have a little village and then you have a bunch of open space around it. But something like that, I think, could work well. And by the way, then it wouldn't be a cottage area every mile because there aren't that many lots available where that could work. But that's one example of how to make a cottage thing work within the keeping of the town. The second piece, I would say, is in the creation of the Community Protection Act Fund. So if you think about the development we might do with, say, a 40R and be able to work collaboratively with the right partner and negotiate for a contribution to that fund, then that dollar amount would then fund taking other existing buildings and converting them into technically affordable housing. So that's one thing that would help us meet the affordability requirements without building new. I think, Jen, the other thing, and this ties to the open space piece, you can then use that money also to fund preservation of open space. So I think, again, from a cottage perspective and then from the CPA piece, both tie into the preservation to me.
Can I just ask Jen a question? The town was presented with CPA in the past, and it didn't pass, correct? Do you know what year that was?
Unfortunately, when CPA very first came out, so many communities were kind of excited about it. So the CPA, just for a very quick and dirty primer, okay? You can look more into it. But the CPA basically says you do a 1 to 3% surcharge on your tax bill. You can exempt whatever amount you choose up front. In the beginning, it was the first $150K of a property's value. You can go, homes are a bit more valuable now, so you could go 2, you could go 250, whatever. You do that exemption, so you're protecting, in theory, people who might need that housing protection, or I shouldn't say housing protection, financial protection a little more in theory. So you exempt that first, and then in the beginning, the state matched it 100% out of their housing fund, which still exists today. I speak as a Sturbridge resident because Sturbridge went wild with this. They did a 3% surcharge. They were one of the first communities in the door. We've preserved over almost 3,000 acres of open space. In Sturbridge, just now, like many communities, they're starting to use the housing portion of that, because the rule with CPA funds is at least, and believe it or not, I don't know this road, it's either 10 or 15% has to go to each of three categories: housing production, open space rec, so recreation or open space or both, and historic preservation. So at a minimum, you bring in, say, 200K in a year, at least 15% of the amount you bring in each year goes into each of those three categories. The rest is held accounting-wise in a combined pot. You have a CPA committee, and the CPA committee makes recommendations themselves, and or they take requests from groups working in the community. If you know Sturbridge at all, we have a super aggressive trail committee. Super aggressive. So they are at the CPA every year, at least once a year, asking for CPA funds to develop new walking trails or new things. The CPA committee reviews it, and they make a recommendation at town meeting. Town meeting ultimately has the say on what funds are spent out of there. But again, that minimum amount has to be in each of the three categories, and it's recommended by the CPA and only approved by town meeting vote for expenditure. So as the years have gone on, the state match has reduced, but it is still pretty significant in some communities, especially those that have the higher percentages. But again, you can do anything between 1% and 3%. You can do 1.5%, you can do 2.25%, you can.
Yeah, and the important implication, of course, is some towns, so Chatham did this and bought historic properties, converted them to apartments, and that's how they helped meet their affordability. The town of Lexington, this is how they got over 10%. They used this kind of money to buy properties, and so I think it's a good model.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice, but at the time, and I'm just giving you factual information from the time, and anecdotal, and some of you will understand this. At the time, the Historic Commission was chaired by a particular man who was a very nice guy, but he wasn't the best public speaker. And in the beginning, the town was barred from using town resources and town personnel to educate and promote the act for whatever reason. I don't even remember, it was so long ago. So I couldn't do anything to help get the word out there. So the Historic Commission, who anecdotally in town at the time were known as the Hysterical Commission. I'm sorry, it's just the truth at the time. I'm not saying they weren't doing great work, but there was an attitude. They said, we need to do this, because they were looking at it from a historic preservation angle. There's so much here in Sutton that could benefit from those kind of funds, especially for historic preservation. So they wanted to jump all over it, so they took it on. The chair at the time was the speaker, and I don't know that he fully understood all the nuts and bolts, and it wasn't well presented, and people were just afraid. It was something new, and they just saw it as just more money, another tax, oh my gosh. And that's just how it was viewed, and it went down in big flames, big giant flames, and since then, nobody's wanted to touch it. Because it takes an education process, as all of you are learning in this process. It's huge, but the one good thing about CPA now is so many communities, as you pointed out, Jim, have used it for so many amazing things. So now you have just oodles of examples of what towns you can have used the money for, and you have really good methods to work with your assessors or other towns to show what is that impact. If you have a 1% on an average tax bill, blah, blah, blah.
There's really good reasons to bring this up, educate the people, and try to get this in for the town. It's like having an IRA or a 401k and your company matching. So that's a simple analogy of why you'd want to do this. And
Well, that's only upon a sale, right?
No.
No, it's annually.
it's on the tax.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's on my tax bill every year. And I don't even notice it really. It's like
and
$30.
the state
$40.
pay towards it just like your employer would with your 401k or IRA. So we lose every year that we don't have it, and we can't put that money towards our town for all these good reasons. So it's a good education we should have and try to get it passed for many different reasons.
For clarity, through the chair, what is the percentage?
That's
1 to
distinct.
3%.
1 to 3.
What is that?
1 to
No,
3.
no, okay, so let me
You
be more
choose.
specific. We assess a 1% tax on top of the additional tax and all the property tax. What is the state reimbursing
I
us?
could double check what the actual
It's
state
not
reimbursement.
consistent across everybody.
Right.
It
Is-
depends on your.
Is it dependent on the community's wealth? Because we don't qualify for community development block grants, right?
Is
Because of our
not-
income?
Is
It's-
not.
So the
is not,
reimbursement
no.
is not based on
It
the.
is not. No, in fact, if you look at the base formula, and I just took a quick look at it today, it's an interesting formula, and it has a lot to do with kind of levies and property values, how long you've been a CPA. There's a lot of different factors. So again, not an expert on it because, again, I can't educate myself on everything, so I'm not going to educate myself on stuff where that crashed and burned until you tell me to. So.
Well, we went for 3%, right? Jen? We-
At
when
the
we-
t- I don't
So
think
this
I
would
think
be
it was.
something-
I think it was the max.
I thought
I-
we went for 1.5, but I'm not positive.
So on a $500,000 house, what would that cost me?
$150.
Well,
$150?
so you're exempting the first.
Do you know what
ours
this-
was first 150, you take it off.
But
so-
you don't have to, right? You said that's an option.
We can make it
But
500.
we did.
But
A
that's a good
community
option.
doesn't have to have any takeoff.
Can I just
But we did.
pause for a second? This would be a super good analysis to have inside of a report. If somebody with a
Perfect.
good financials,
Perfect.
accounting background could actually do a review of this and have it really clear, presentation of it in a report and say, here's examples. I've reviewed 10 other towns to have to have a review and show here's a comparison of different ways it
Perfect.
could work out. Here's how it works for Sutton. If we did 1% to 3%, so it's really clear, and we could present that. We're going to be doing presentations in April. Here's how it could present, and we could start to show people. Here's how it could really have a great benefit to us.
I agree, through the chair, I just thought you were talking like,
Oh.
like you knew. I apologize.
No,
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
go
no,
down
no.
that rabbit hole.
I haven't done the analysis for Sutton.
You sounded like you did, so I apologize. You sounded like you knew more. I apologize.
I do know that a lot of towns have
Go
this,
ahead.
and that it works like a 401k IRA, but it's more complex than that.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
The way you were speaking,
Yeah,
for clarity,
Yeah.
it sounded like you knew more intimate details.
yep,
That's all I was trying to say.
yeah. It takes an analysis of it.
I would say let's move on.
Yep, exactly. And I was we're watching the clock here. We've been maxing out. We're going over time in a lot of meetings, so if we could try to keep it under the time, it'd be great. So for divvying this up, we have, well, the CPA is right here. Do we have people in this room that would like to review the Community Preservation Act as how it could be used as a tool, and how that could actually, it's already a recommendation, but how to retool that recommendation so that it could be presented to the town well, and how it could impact the town?
Right, and here's the deal. You just gather the data. You may find, when you gather the data, there's some deep, dark secret in there that you don't think this should be recommended. I haven't seen that in the towns. But again, it's really just your role is, you're the people giving your fellow residents the knowledge they need to make these decisions. So, we recommended it in the last process because of what we found. That was 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Maybe something else has come up or whatever. But again, you're doing that exactly what Wes said, just diving in, getting the data, and then you as your subgroup going, good idea, bad idea, and then pulling that back to the larger group, good idea, bad idea, what should our recommendation be? And then it goes from there.
Yeah. So Wes, I put a bunch of work into that one already. You can put my name on
Right.
that one.
Oh, sorry.
How many sections are we cutting this into?
Well, we have these 3 areas right here.
That's
These
it.
3 sections, each one have these chapters. They're not necessarily all that long,
Right.
right? But they all need to be reviewed and updated as Apple. And there could be, do we have a new section? Do we have any new sections to add? Such as MBTA is not a section that's there right now.
Right. So how many people do we want to have in each subcommittee of the third committee?
We might only want to say 2,
2 or 3.
right? Because you always want someone to review something with you. So one person doesn't have a reviewer. So if you have 2, that'd be great.
Or 3.
Because what I was just going to bring out there, I don't think this is an area where all 15 members of this board have to be involved in a little piece of that, because ultimately all 15 members will read the draft, pick apart what they like or don't like, and bring it, discuss it. So I think if we have a certain group of people who are good at writing, have a particular area they're really of interest, like the community preservation, those 6, 7, 8 people might be in, rather than gathering others that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that are-
certainly, nobody should feel pressured to take a section, but boy, where you have the blessing of a 15-person group, if people are excited or have some knowledge or have already done some work in some areas, the more the merrier. But again, subgroups in this area, especially keeping track of open meeting law and kind of just easy back and forth, easy working groups, I would say maximum 3 probably. Because again, anything the subgroups are doing has to be CC'd to the chairs, so that's 5 in terms of open meeting law. So you want to just make sure you're kind of staying, in compliance.
So Jim, 1.2 is promote the CPA. 1.4, it skips, is the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It kind of goes hand in hand with the CPA.
Sure. Yep.
Don't want to
I
necessarily.
mean, this is an easy one for
Delegates.
somebody to jump on. I mean, Jim's already doing all the work. I mean,
Is there anybody else that wants to help out with that?
Any help out?
Brian, Dan?
Brian and Dan, there you go.
There's 3.
Yes, specifically 4, more so 4 than, but yeah.
All right. There was secure dedicated affordable housing coordinator.
I don't know that you need to do a lot of work on
Yeah,
that,
the
other
second-
than seeing if towns already have one and kind of what
Okay.
it took to do that.
So which one is he talking about?
There's also continue to conduct ongoing community outreach and education on housing. I think that's a pretty simple one to update as well. Now, explore inclusionary zoning.
So let me give you a quick, what is inclusionary zoning? So inclusionary zoning is what we tried to do at Fall Town Meeting. So what inclusionary zoning generally does is you already allow subdivisions in the town of Sutton. 250 feet of frontage, 2 acres in 91.7% of town. What inclusionary zoning says is if the next developer comes in, they're gonna build a new subdivision, you would put in a paragraph that says, at least, you go minimum 10%, so you're never losing ground with your 40B requirements. At least 10% of your units have to be 40B compliant. So again, for-profit developer making money in your community can put you behind the 8 ball with the number of units they're creating. Instead of being part of the problem with inclusionary zoning, you make them, if not be part of the solution by going to like 15%, at least not put you farther behind. So inclusionary zoning takes forms of housing you've already voted to allow, over 55 housing, standard subdivisions, condominium projects, and it says all the things we already allow, no new animals, all the things we already allow, you have to do at least 10% so we don't fall farther behind while you're making money. We don't fall farther behind, and you can go to a higher percentage if you're trying to use that to catch up a little. So that's what inclusionary zoning is, kind of in a summary.
Is 10% the number, or can we mandate more?
Oh, you can absolutely. So what we tried to do at Fall Town Meeting was go to 15 because we were trying to use that as one arm to get at our 40B requirements. You're not getting to your 40B requirements with one arm. You need multiple ways to get at it and keep up with it. And inclusionary zoning gives you a way, and again, that was, at Fall, it was supposed to be 5 units or more.
It went well.
Thanks, Mario.
I'm sorry. But right now, as we stand, we can't mandate anything anyway, and anything the builders build right now, whether they put in affordable housing or not, does not count towards our goal, correct?
We mandate a minimum 15% and over 55 now. That is the only bylaw that has inclusionary zoning, is over 55. Open space residential developments, they have an option to get a density bonus. If you give me an affordable unit, you get another market rate unit, and you can increase the base number you could develop by 15% total. So we can't force any developer to do it except for in over 55s right now. That's the rule. So again, when you do inclusionary, they have a base requirement, whatever you set it at. You would never set it less than 10, or it means nothing really. But you can make it 15. You can make it anything you want. The other thing you can do with inclusionary zoning is you can say, and if you don't want to do that, you will pay us
$400,000.
and it's usually not a flat number, it's usually a formula. But and it goes into that housing trust fund that is, I believe, recommended in this plan. That is strictly, this kind of money has to go into a housing trust fund for housing, for the town then to use that money to do what the town thinks should be done to create affordable housing.
Yeah.
So it has that.
One last question. Whereas
So through the chair, this is Andrea, I'd like to work on each of the sections that deal with zoning strategies with whoever would like to work on it with me. And I would note that the 2.3 section on modifying the accessory apartment bylaw has actually been superseded by the changes in state law, I think, Jen. Right? We can't modify the accessory apartment bylaw to be non-conforming with the state law.
You're right.
just a question.
So 2.
Just one question. Excuse me. Back to the question at hand, though. Right now, we're not in safe harbor, correct?
Oh gosh, no.
So even if we mandate the 15%, does that matter if we're not in safe harbor?
Well, the 15% is a tool to get you. It's a tool to get you towards safe harbor, but it's not a primary tool. It's more of a tool so you don't fall farther behind on your 40B goals.
What I mean to say is,
I'm sorry, I'm being
That's okay.
obtuse.
No, it's okay. What I mean to say is, right now,
Right this
the
minute.
because we're not in safe harbor, does the builder have to follow inclusionary zoning with us?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If it's written into your bylaw, they have to do it.
But
Absolutely.
it's not in our bylaw right now.
That's not in our
It's
bylaw right
only in our
So,
over 55.
We don't have it in our bylaw, so the builders don't have to do it.
Nope.
And if it's in our bylaw, they would have to do that. It would give incremental towards safe harbor, but it's not necessarily there to get us to our goals, right?
It's to protect
And our
us.
best way to get to our goals is the other tools that we're looking at here.
It's just to keep us from getting
It's
further
keep us from
behind.
falling behind. So let's say we do all 299 or 300, some little like 300 units to get us into safe harbor, 100% of the way there to our state goals. And then a developer comes in and puts in another 10 units. Well, now you have to go start building affordable housing again. So it's a way to keep us from falling behind.
Right.
So it's a good idea to keep.
great.
So, is this something you're interested in working on? I'm gonna flip the cards on you.
That was smooth, Wes.
You've asked a lot of questions on it. You seem interested.
Nice and played.
Yeah. See you like that?
Certainly.
All right, there we go. Mario and Andrea.
Yeah, and I'm willing to take direction from all of you on all of the sections on the zoning strategies. Jen, with your leadership, I have a really good computer.
Good.
Modify open space residential development. Do you want to give like a quick summary of this because it's 8:25?
Ready?
Yeah.
Get ready to laugh at me. I don't remember what the recommendation was here.
Okay.
I don't.
It's
So-
Jen, respectfully and with cordiality, some of these topics, some of these headline items have been antedated by changes in the law and compliance. So open space we need to look at. I'm happy to look at that. Accessory apartment bylaw would really be consistent with current Massachusetts statutes, right? Because we're not gonna go out on a bench
You might
here.
want just a blurb in there to explain to people why it would be difficult to deed restrict those. Because there are a lot of people who are like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just deed restrict those, and we're good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that easy.
Right,
So there,
which
there should be like a quick blurb on that.
Yeah, no, I'm not, protesting against a blurred, but we're not gonna be modifying it
Nope.
too far afield of what's in the law right now at the state level.
You're right.
We have a state
Yeah.
level one for 900 square feet, and then we have a town level one as
Yeah,
well.
Up to
right.
1,200.
I mean,
1200, yeah. So
Yeah.
we don't really need much work except for just updating that this is already taken care
yeah,
of.
no, I mean, if the town is more liberal than the state, we're golden. If the town is less
Yep.
liberal than the state, we've just put a gun to our head. We're gonna get shot down. Adopt a cottage housing bylaw. This is gonna require a lot of discussion just because we had a lot of pushback at the meeting in the fall. Expand
actually
uses for
discussed it.
multifamily and
Hold on.
mixed-use development
Pause
hits
for a
with
second.
two
This is going in
point
2 different tangents. We're still on older ones. What's up?
So if we look
Okay.
at the housing production plan, this 2.0, 2.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is only like 4 pages.
In total.
Yeah, we're
So,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
can that group
exactly,
just do the
Christine.
whole 4 pages?
Yeah, that's what these are different recommendations.
So,
yeah.
so your group is
Yeah.
doing the whole 1.0, everything, all those pages? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I
so
would
one
actually
group's
go-
not looking at,
But hold on, we get to 2.5, and now we're getting to the 40R, 40S. We're getting into some bigger recommendations.
Yeah, that's gonna be longer now. Absolutely,
so like
Wes.
the old one is short. As we get to the newer one, it gets to a bigger. It's a different kind of.
Right. That's when it really, the rubber meets the road. In 2.5 and 2.6, and I can't read 2.7, it seems to fall off the slide.
2.7 is
But-
a spaceholder in case there's anything new we want to add. That's why it's empty.
Well, it may be the non-compliance option with 2.6.
2.6, we discuss what non-compliance could look like if we have fines or we get taken to
Yeah,
the
you just
court.
give the
But it's
facts.
not.
Okay.
This for a housing production plan, we are looking at a compliance and how to comply, and then we could discuss within that same paragraph or whatever that if it wasn't voted in, but the law is there, we are going to lose grant money. We're gonna have to.
Well, that's
taken to the court.
MBTA. You could do 40B non-compliance, which is the heart of this plan.
Yeah.
And most people sitting here know what that means, especially if
Right.
you live on
Yeah,
Red
I
Rock
agree,
Road.
Jen. And we can,
But-
we can massage those. Whoever would like to join us on that, we can massage those.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else want to also help with a few of these?
I'll help with 4 and 5.
4 and 5. All right. So now we get into the bigger one, which is 2.5, 4R, 4S. That's going to have the 40R, 40S review. Does
Yeah.
anybody else look at the 40R, 40S review?
Yeah, no,
with you?
I'm willing to do that one too with
along
Jerry
with
and whoever.
Normand. Okay.
so you'll ask.
And Wes Andrea, yeah.
Okay. And that's like that flows down. Well,
Yep.
I'll just so nobody
Yep, exactly.
understand. Okay. Our favorite topic.
Could we write into 2.5 new MBTA compliance, nothing more to say?
2.6?
2.6, yeah, nothing more, I'm teasing, nothing more to say. I mean, it's just, yeah, there's nothing more to say here, yeah, okay.
Well, we need to write the section on explaining the parcels, reason behind the selection, that this is on, we only recommended if this to go to town
Yeah.
meeting, if there's law is upheld.
Wes, maybe that should come from the committee that actually did the inspections and analysis.
Mm-hmm. Which is a,
That's Mike, Steph, and Dan. Dan.
okay,
Obviously, I can help you with that.
yeah. Make suitable public property available for affordable housing. I know I could look look at a bit of this myself. That's the same as 3.2.
Somebody has the Excel spreadsheet. That'll make that easier.
Ooh,
I do have a bunch of Excel data now, yes.
yeah?
So,
Yeah. I mean, he has the Excel spreadsheet and I have the GIS spreadsheet. So, I mean, the first step in that is really taking the town parcel
Oh,
Excel, which is in the open space rec plan, by the
Yep.
way. But we would want the most recent one.
yeah.
So you have the list of town parcels. The advantage of having the list from the open space rec plan is we already did the evaluation on every single one of those parcels in terms of wet, constrained, blah, blah, blah. So you really already have that front end work mostly done. So then it's just weeding through that and seeing what might be appropriate and then what that process would look like. So really talking about RFPs, and that's where it gets into kind of something there's a reason you're the chair, because you and Jerry have already had the conversation about those partnerships. And those are the kind of things, a really good RFP process and or partnering with the organizations you guys already talked about is integral to the development of those town parcels in the way you want them to be developed.
So I'm happy to give a spreadsheet to anybody. I just think it's, I mean,
I have the spreadsheet.
yeah. And for what it's worth, I'd be happy to take a cottage at Marion's Camp.
The who?
At Marion, slight joke, but I mean, if you think about the different pieces of land, I mean, there's a few good ones, but there's,
Again, we do need to check, you'll check the list and see, and we can double check if there is a use restriction. Because, for instance, many of you remember the land, we just placed a restriction down at Huff Road as we did the playground restrictions. So there are a bunch of town parcels that have statutory restrictions on them. So you just need to look at the list, see if there's a statutory restriction. If you don't see one, we'll need to double check that. So if there's a statutory restriction, it's off the table.
anybody else on these?
Wes, it'd be
Yeah.
helpful if what does this end this? Because I
It's in
can't,
the housing production plan.
I have it right here, but
It's
I
a
don't-
chapters,
Yeah, so it's the
some
chapters.
chapters.
Once
That's,
you get through the beginning, like page 46.
Thank you, I can't
So
find.
page 47 is 3.0, 3.1 makes suitable.
Okay, 46, that's enough, hold on.
That's kind of the end of it, and then the survey after.
I can't see that.
Yeah, most of that plan is the front, the data. And then it's really, again, when we write plans, and this was driven from the inside kind of out using, the planning board tasked me to do the first plan and asked me to choose a group of people to work with me. So it was a different animal than the planning board, who this time around, based on what's happened over the last year, said, you know what, no, you don't do it this time, you don't need to get beat up anymore. That let's have the residents be the group, let's make them a formal working group, and this will be a slightly different process. So when we're doing internal plans, short and sweet, you don't really need to go on a soliloquy. It's really summarize the issue, what did the data show, here's the thing. So you may choose a different tact, you may want to be more verbose or add in more stuff or more data you think's important. But again, Christine's already pointed out, there are multiple sections that are really only 4 pages.
But so Central Mass is basically doing pages 3 through 35?
31, I think, is where they're going up to.
Table 22 is new units, housing production goals.
They'll do anything with, I might have the numbers wrong, Christine. It's
okay.
anything that data is on, basically, they'll update for you.
right up to the
And I will-
strategies.
I will-
Once it goes strategies, then it's up to us.
So they're doing everything except for the strategies.
We're gonna do the executive summary and then the strategies.
think they
Everything
are
between
doing
executive summary and strategies.
I think they would.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing housing challenges.
Housing challenges too. I agree. I don't think.
I
that
mean,
they
some
would.
of the housing challenges come from the data. You'll see them as the data falls out.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were actually gonna rewrite that section, so.
You're gonna do the data in it though?
Yeah, the
Okay.
data, and then.
So
they
up
give-
to 31 housing cost burden,
Yes.
that kind of thing?
Yep.
So 3 to 31, CMRPC, okay.
and they don't do the executive summary. That is you guys.
So Wes, if you want, I'll help you with the 3.1, 3.2,
Anybody else?
since we work with a lot of them.
Like an auction, going once, going twice? No?
There are
Actually, Norman
there
might
are a
be
few
able-
people missing tonight too that might,
Yep.
you know,
I bet Norman would be interested in the public property one. given
Yeah.
his role.
This is pretty similar. We already
You,
got
four
people
22,000
missing.
from them.
Yeah, you
So
volunteer.
it's very similar to the funding we already got.
I put in red or something.
I think we can use more, but I still have 6,700. Sorry. That was me.
All right,
I apologize.
going from here, just doing a quick, check-in on the schedule. So, just a communication outreach, we have the Central Mass Regional Planning meeting coming up in 2 weeks' time. It's gonna be at 6:30.
6:30.
How long do you think that's gonna be?
They said they'd put us first on the agenda because I told them we had an HPP meeting right after.
Yep.
I anticipate no more than 10 minutes,
Okay.
honestly, maybe less. They usually will say, Jen, because I'm the one that's usually there. I'll go, Wes, and then
Yep.
Wes will give a summary of why we want their help. They might ask a question or two, and then we're done.
So we
They
can keep this
consider
meeting at
all
7.
of their requests at the end. Like they just hear what you have to say, and then they'll do their consideration at the end.
So we can keep this meeting at 7 o'clock.
I think you can.
Okay, that's why I just wanna make sure. Because I'll go straight from that meeting at 6:30, this meeting at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that'll be to try to kick off the actual survey.
And that meeting's a Zoom, so you could do it from in here.
That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be here, but if, I was just worried in case, if that one went on for 45 minutes, an hour.
No.
And Jim would have to chair.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier on today.
Yeah, I mean, you know my memory, so if you remind me to just reach out to them and confirm that they're putting us first on the agenda, that would be helpful.
Yep,
And I'll get that confirmed.
yep,
That's just for you.
yeah, yes. Yep. You just gotta be here for 7 o'clock for
Sure I
the
will.
meeting itself, yeah. Meeting's at 6:30 for Mario.
Was it a good day?
No problem. And then the survey, we'll keep on prepping for the survey. We're gonna meet next week, keep on prepping for the survey, the questions, get that going. Talk with Jen today. The survey itself will be through April, and then hopefully get the results back towards the end of April. And then we're gonna be compiling the data from that and outreach for the actual report. Because, we're trying to get this report finished in May. So keep on calling it a report because I'm used to work and doing a lot of technical reports. Plan. We're getting this plan done for May, so we get submitted. And we're gonna be scheduling outreach meetings as well to get, engage the community and get feedback as well.
What channels are you using?
Channels?
Yeah, channels like, how are you gonna get the survey out?
Central Mass Regional Planning will be doing the actual survey.
So
Mail.
the groups,
Mail,
Do-
I believe that's.
Yeah.
snail mail,
Card to every household.
postcard,
postcard?
a big one.
And we should put it like on the Facebook. I mean, we can put
Yep.
the link, the hyperlink into
You really
other.
need to, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to do multiple facet. People aren't just throwing things,
Yeah, so you've
full
got a
circles.
communication group that's working on all the different avenues that it'll go out through. So I don't know if anybody from the communication group wants to give kind of an update of what you're thinking about, Pam or Don? What-
Well, we're right now, what we're doing is we're looking at the other surveys that similar communities like Sutton have sent out, and we're compiling, like, from those questions and our own thoughts and questions, we're compiling a short survey of about 14 questions that will go out to be answered by the public.
That's by mail and respond by computer?
Yeah, so
Right.
how you need to make it work is, Ryan, from community members, you need to give multiple avenues. So you get a postcard. It'll be a bigger postcard. It'll be consistent with other mailings by the town, so people won't question whether it's an official or not, hopefully. And it will have a QR code. It will have the website. It will have information on if you need a hard copy. Here's who you call, okay? It will also have, ideally, the public meeting dates. Just like last year when you got the survey that centered more on MBTA, it had all of those things, except for it was missing how you get a hard copy, and then we had to blast that over everything else. So every household will get that postcard, and every P.O. box will get that postcard. And it'll be on Facebook. It'll be on both official and unofficial Facebook. It'll be posted at various locations around town. We usually do posters. The center, the center store, the corner store, any place you guys feel appropriate as a communication group or the larger group would hit people. So, and then there's a consideration of, do you send it out as a flyer with school kids? Do you, so trying to get it to all the churches, those kind of things. So trying to get every tentacle you can out there. So, and you have, the communication director is on the communication group. So, awesome. So, but if you have any ideas where, hey, I'm always in this place and I always see tons of townies, let the group know, because it's easy to print a poster and at least have it in people's faces if it's out there. Right. So yeah.
Sounds like it's covered. Good job.
Yeah. Just real quick question. Do the businesses in town get the survey as well or not?
There'll be a link on the town's website. So if somebody goes on the website, they can get into the link. There's, we never have any issues really with, or rarely do people from Millbury or whatever go on our survey.
Right.
But if a business wanted to input, no. It goes out to every P.O. box, so if a business happened to get one and they wanted to log in, they could do that. But no, we weren't thinking it would go to every business, because we're talking about housing and housing concerns. It is related to business, but...
Well, I guess my only point was that whether business owners in town have an opinion of the housing around them and how to help their business, I don't.
I think we should ask him, are you a business or are you a resident?
Yes,
Yeah.
you'd want to clarify.
So
but I
there's some further questions on there, I think, that we talked about, and I don't know if we're going to end up having those on there with regards to people who don't live in town but work in town.
Yeah.
So my other question becomes, do we get to a point where someone decides they want to fill it out more than once? Not that I think anyone would, and there's no way to restrict that, but we did have it kind of open up to people who want to come to town too. So.
Yeah, on the last time around, we made a concerted effort to make sure we did a blast out to all the businesses, because obviously we have a pretty good communications with a lot of the businesses in town. So we made a concerted effort to make sure emails went out to all the businesses, because the group with that effort said we want to make sure businesses know, because MBTA housing in particular is often workforce housing, and we have heard from a lot of our businesses that one of their employees often say if they don't take jobs and things, or that they have filling jobs, is anecdotally it's because, well, they can't live here. They can't live anywhere near here. It's too expensive, so they just stay in Worcester or stay wherever and work out there. So that's why we did this concerted effort. When the surveys came back, it was less than 5 people that worked in town that didn't live in town that responded. I was so sad, because I really thought you'd see more of a response there. Doesn't mean we can't do the same outreach.
Yeah.
And again, the P.O. boxes, all of them get blanketed, and a bunch of those are businesses, but we did a direct emailing.
So going to this one here, we are looking at questions that do engage those that work in town and may not live here.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see what their thoughts are.
Yeah.
And going back to what Brian did mention, when you say channels, I'm thinking what TV channels at first. I was kind of thinking to myself, I don't know what TV channel. But everything on Netflix, things like these days. But if you look at, it might be a bit small, but you can see there's outreach meetings that are actually plunked right at the start of the survey. And part of that is that if we have 3 strategic meetings that are to engage the population of our town, to engage the community, and that way it's okay, we're out here, we're in person, when you were talking to you about like the laws in a really easy way that you understand why it's important, so we don't get to a 2,000 extra units that are gonna engulf square miles of the town. Oh, and by the way, do you know about the survey? Can you get everybody you know, and so we can engage people. And that's right, that started that 3-week survey process. We could hopefully get more than 300 people, getting back information for us. So that's part of that avenue as well.
And I think maybe, I'm sorry, the last bit I just thought of was kind of to Mario's point of, maybe it wasn't, about if people possibly fill out more than one survey. I mean, I think if it's a population of 300 or 400, you can sort them out by every household only gets one. You have to put what household you live in. It can't be a blank survey.
Yeah.
That doesn't count. I mean,
Well,
and-
you don't actually say where you live in
You
the
don't?
survey.
We could,
You
we
do
could.
not.
Oh,
I mean, you could.
But you
if
don't have to?
at the
Okay,
end.
okay.
No, so there is always, because again, you gotta take a position. If you make people identify themselves, you lose
True,
a certain
true.
percentage
Yeah.
of people.
Nope, that's true. Yeah.
If you trust that nobody is going to go on there and do 100 surveys, there's a level of trust. We do not have the technology to be tagging IP addresses and
might ask-
seeing if a survey comes from the same IP address, and then this,
Right.
so
Yeah.
we just don't.
We might ask what road or what segment of town or something like that. There's some of those demographic type of data we could ask for, but it wouldn't be individually
Yeah.
identifying.
It starts to get counterproductive to the amount of questions you have to have on that on
Well,
top of
agreed.
it all, because I think the thing we've been talking about is keeping it shorter
Yeah.
and more concise, so that we don't. If someone sees a long survey, like if you've ever had one where you starts and it says you're 10% done, and you hit the next screen, and then you just shut the computer down and throw your coffee cup across the room. So we're trying to keep it as short and concise as possible. I don't think there is any value to asking where they live or where, and I don't have a problem. To me, just as one person here on this board, if the husband and the wife each want to fill out the survey and the kids want to fill out the survey, we've got 18-year-old and 20-year-old folks who are trying to figure out a way to get out of their home and find ways to live,
Yeah.
which has become a major problem, not just in this town, but in the
All
community.
different opinions.
Yeah, I got one of those.
All right, so then, the other main thing we have is the the report updates. So we're just divvying up the actual report right now. So let's review the sections of the report that we all have to update and start working on getting these draft updates done over April. Because in May, we're gonna try to start wrapping this thing up. That's our goal. We don't wanna be dragging this thing on to the summer. Yes, Mario, you're looking.
So we need to communicate pretty much via email. I doubt we're all going to get together
So
and.
what I will do is, in the groups that we have set out here, and if anybody else want, like the ones you're missing, if they want to join into a group, I could send out like a Dropbox just to yourselves or doing a certain section, right? And you could, I'll put the original report from 2019 in there, and you could do the updates for that section, right? Anything that you have, any data, any Excel files, or any images, things like that you're going to use for the report, you can keep in that folder structure as well. Myself and Jim will have access to that Dropbox. And then the same thing for other sections like the 40R, 40S will just go to a certain people as well. And then we'll take the sections that you're working on back into a master folder. And that way, it's not going back with 50 emails a day like we all love between different groups, and I end up have multiple email accounts and trying to keep track of it all. You could just say, hey, I'm done with this, this team's done with that section, take a look, and we could extract that information, and it keeps it clean.
Right, we're going to need to email too between each other, though.
We will still email, but it'll limit the amount. We're gonna limit the overproduction of emails.
Thank God. So I just want to underscore again, if you're working on 40S, and for instance, you love Wellesley's or 40R and 40S bylaw, I don't even know if they have one, but if you find one and you love it, and you use that in your group, that comes into your Dropbox, and then I'll be working, and Pam will be working with Jim and Wes to make sure those documents go up to the HPP website, because again, anything you use in your deliberations and your formulation needs to also be available to the public, not the multiple drafts of your section, just that end product of the section. So And as, I don't know if all of you are familiar with Dropbox or those other things, but it does have a nice tracking feature and note feature. So you don't necessarily need to be emailing back and forth. You can be making your notes or your comments right in that platform if you want.
Any questions? Look at that, it's 10 to 9. We're early for a change.
A motion to adjourn?
I like it.
Jim, aye.
Wesley Snell, aye.
Mike Hagan, aye.
Brian Stevenson, aye.
Don McKinnon and I.
Pam Nichols, aye.
Mario Jamea, aye.
Jerry Townsend, aye.
Dan Tyler, aye.
Brian Chambers, aye.
Christine Watkins, aye.
All right, look at that. Excellent job.
Andrea Mateo.
Everything you did tonight.
I will send it out